Have you heard about Napoleon's strangest defeat? It wasn't at Waterloo, but against an army of rabbits. In July 1807, after signing a major peace treaty, Napoleon wanted to celebrate with a grand rabbit hunt. His chief of staff, Alexander Berthier, organized the event and, wanting to guarantee a successful hunt, he bought hundreds, maybe thousands, of tame rabbits from local farmers, instead of using wild ones. On the day of the hunt, the cages were opened. But instead of running away, these domesticated bunnies saw Napoleon and his men, and thought, dinner time. They swarmed the emperor, hopping all over him. Napoleon, the great military genius, tried to fight them off with his riding crop, but it was no use. He was forced to retreat to his carriage, with rabbits still trying to jump in as he sped away. While it's a funny story, it's mostly anecdotal, but it's a great reminder that even the most powerful leaders can have some very unexpected and very fluffy, bad days. Thanks for watching. History is filled with epic battles, brilliant strategies, and larger-than-life figures. And then there's the story of how Napoleon Bonaparte, the man who conquered Europe, was defeated by an army of bunnies. No, I'm not kidding. This might just be the most bizarre, hilarious, and humbling moment in the life of one of history's greatest military minds. So grab your snacks, because today we're diving into the fluffy, chaotic tale of Napoleon's great rabbit retreat. The year is 1807. Napoleon is at the absolute peak of his power. He has just signed the Treaties of Tilsit, effectively ending the war with Russia and Prussia and bringing a temporary peace to the continent. He's feeling good. He's the master of Europe. So, what does a conquering emperor do to celebrate? He goes on a hunt. The whole thing was organized by his chief of staff, Marshal Alexander Berthier. Now, Berthier wanted to make this a truly spectacular event for his boss, a grand celebration for the emperor and his top officers. The plan was simple: gather a huge number of rabbits, release them, and let Napoleon and his party enjoy a classic aristocratic pastime. But here's where the plan starts to unravel. Instead of using wild hares, which would have naturally fled from the hunters, Berthier decided to source the rabbits from local farms. He collected hundreds, maybe even thousands, of them. These weren't wild animals. They were tame, domesticated bunnies who were used to being fed by humans. And this one small detail would turn a leisurely hunt into absolute chaos. Picture the scene. It's a beautiful day in the French countryside. Napoleon arrives, dressed for the occasion, surrounded by his entourage of beaters and gun bearers. The cages are opened, and the rabbits are released onto a large grassy field. But instead of running for their lives, the rabbits do something completely unexpected. They see Napoleon and his men, and their little bunny brains think one thing: lunchtime. Suddenly, this massive horde of fluffy, hungry rabbits charges not away from the hunting party, but directly toward them. Imagine hundreds, maybe thousands, of bunnies, swarming forward in a single, unified wave. They're not scared. They're demanding food. The hunters were completely stunned. They tried to shoot, but it was impossible. The rabbits were everywhere, hopping over their boots, climbing up their legs, and even trying to jump onto Napoleon himself. The emperor, the man who had faced down the combined armies of Europe, found himself in a desperate struggle against a relentless tide of fluff. He tried to shoo them away with his hands and even used his riding crop to fend them off, but it was no use. The bunny battalion was unstoppable. The scene was pure pandemonium. These weren't ferocious beasts. They were just very, very hungry rabbits who saw the most powerful man in Europe as a giant walking carrot dispenser. Realizing the battle was lost, Napoleon did the only thing he could. He ordered a retreat. He turned and fled back to his imperial carriage, but the rabbits pursued him. They were relentless. Some even managed to jump into the carriage with him, as the coachman frantically whipped the horses to get away. The Emperor of France was busy flinging rabbits out the window, trying to escape his furry, adorable conquerors. Can you imagine the sight? Napoleon, the military genius, making a hasty retreat from a bunny uprising. As you can guess, Marshal Berthier, the man who organized this whole fiasco, got a serious earful from the emperor. The incident was a huge embarrassment for Napoleon, and it was mostly kept quiet during his lifetime. You don't want the world to know that the invincible conqueror was chased off by a bunch of rabbits. It doesn't exactly help maintain that image of an all-powerful ruler. But among his inner circle, the story became a legendary source of amusement. It was, in its own way, Napoleon's most humiliating defeat. He could outsmart the Austrians and crush the Prussians, but he couldn't handle a furry swarm of hungry bunnies. Now, for the historians in the audience, it's important to ask, did this actually happen? The story is what we call anecdotal. It doesn't appear in official records or Napoleon's own letters from 1807. Instead, it popped up decades later in memoirs and historical accounts. Some historians dismiss it as a myth, a funny story that got embellished over time, but others think it's entirely plausible. Collecting tame animals for a hunt wasn't unheard of, and the core elements of the story are consistent across different tellings. While we might not have a signed affidavit from Napoleon admitting his defeat, the tale has survived because it's just too good and too funny to be forgotten. Whether it's 100% fact or a legendary piece of historical gossip, the story of Napoleon's rabbit attack has had a lasting impact. It does something that few other stories about him do. It humanizes him. It takes this towering figure from the pages of history books and shows a moment of pure, comical vulnerability. Here is the man who redrew the map of Europe, brought low by the most harmless of creatures. It's a perfect example of irony. The great strategist, completely outmaneuvered. The story has been told in books, articles, and countless videos just like this one, because it's a fantastic reminder that even the most powerful people in history can have really, really weird days. It's a testament to the fact that sometimes, the most unexpected foe is the one you could never have prepared for. So the next time you think of Napoleon Bonaparte, remember his brilliant victories at Austerlitz and his grand empire. But also remember the day he was forced into a frantic retreat by an army of hungry rabbits. It's a hilarious, humbling, and utterly unforgettable moment in history. What do you think? Is it a true story or just a tall tale? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this weird piece of history, be sure to like this video and subscribe for more. See you next time.